You're watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. From Toronto, Ontario, I'm Catherine Bullock. Assalamu alaikum and greetings of peace. Today a conversation with Naeem Siddiqi, the Vice Chair of the Olive Tree Foundation, about a recent grant to support victims of Islamophobia in Edmonton. First, some news headlines. Alliance talks might be underway between Trudeau and New Democrats. Canadian wins $100,000 in a literary fiction award for books on refugees. Muslim leaders call on Ontario to end Islamophobia. ACLU fights for Muslims to build their mosque. And the UN says at least 7.3 million Yemenis in need of shelter. And now the details. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau held a meeting with new Democratic Party leader Jagmeet Singh. This has led to speculation that the Liberals and NDP might sign an agreement, NDP support in the House, in exchange for NDP priorities. The new Liberal government is 10 seats short of a majority and will need the support of another party in the House to pass their legislation. According to the National Post, NDP caucus chair Jenny Kwan says the issues the NDP will stand for include housing, climate change, and support for seniors. Media reports say that the conversations so far have remained informal. Omar El Akkad won the 2021 Scotiabank Giller Prize for his book, What Strange Paradise, in a Toronto gala yesterday. The prize comes with $100,000, the largest sum that can be won for Canadian literature awards. Set on a Greek island, the book is a contemporary retelling of Peter Pan. It explores the friendship between 9-year-old Syrian refugee Amir and a native teenager, Vanna. Al-Akkad was born in Egypt, lived in Qatar until he moved to Canada when he was a teenager, and he now lives in Portland, Oregon. Imam Arij Anwar of the London Muslim Mosque called on the Ontario government to dismantle Islamophobia. The London Muslim Mosque and the National Council of Canadian Muslims, or NCCM, have proposed the Our London Family Act to the Ontario government. The Act proposes 6 changes, some of which target education policies regarding Islamophobia or dismantling white supremacist groups. Calls to end Islamophobia come 4 months after the deadly attack on a Muslim family of 4, where a driver purposefully drove into them in London, Ontario. NCCM is calling for the act to be legislated before the spring election to institute immediate change. The Mississippi branch of the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, filed a complaint against the city of Horn Lake for denying a permit to a mosque. The complaint claims that there are no mosques in DeSoto County, forcing worshippers to drive to another city. The 2 plaintiffs seeking to build a mosque in Horn Lake were denied the permit, despite meeting and exceeding site plan requirements. ACLU Director Joshua Tom said the proposed mosque would be on a street already zoned for houses of worship. The city's planning commission, aldermen and mayor are named in the lawsuit. The United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees in Yemen announced on Twitter that 7.3 million Yemenis require shelter and non-food assistance, with 75% being women and children. The agency added that an exhibition was being organized on Tuesday in the capital Sana'a, aimed at presenting solutions to the soaring shelter needs. Yemen has been engulfed by violence and instability since 2012, when Iran-aligned Houthi rebels captured most of the country. A Saudi-led coalition aimed at reinstating the Yemeni government has worsened the situation, causing one of the world's worst man-made humanitarian crises, with 30 million people in need of assistance. That's it for the news. And now our conversation with Naeem Siddiqi, the Vice Chair of the Olive Tree Foundation, about their recent grant to the Rashid Mosque in Edmonton to support the victims of Islamophobia. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show, Brother Naeem.
Wa alaikum salam, Sister Kathy. Glad to be here.
Nice to have you. Now, the Olive Tree Foundation, you've been involved with many years. It's a granting organisation. And this week, I think it was, you announced $100,000 going to a group in Edmonton to support victims of Islamophobia. Can you please tell us about the grant and the recipients?
Sure. We all followed what was happening in Edmonton and Calgary last year. There were several attacks on Muslim women, specifically Islamophobic attacks. And we asked, Olive Tree Foundation usually goes out into the community and asks people to send in grant requests. So we got a grant request from NCCM and Al Rashid Mosque to support the victims of Islamophobia. And the plan is that when people are attacked, once the media leaves, once everybody else leaves, they're left there to cope with mental and physical trauma. And in many cases, the insurance companies don't cover it, or the provincial health plans don't cover a lot of things. And so the plan was to give them the support that they need financially, to deal with these kinds of things. To us, it was a no-brainer. NCCM is a nationally known organization that has been active in anti-Islamophobia work. Al Rashid is the oldest mosque in Canada, and again, very well known, very well reputed institution to take care of these. For us, it was a no-brainer.
So, what is the project actually going to do for the victims of Islamophobia?
What the project is going to do is identify those that have been victims of Islamophobic attacks and then support them in many different ways. If they need legal help, if they need expenses paid for things like physical health therapy, for things like medicine, for things like um, psychological counseling, for example, that they cannot get help from other places, we will, our NCCM as well as Al Rashid will help these victims with these things.
As far as I know, I mean, I have some counsellor friends who do this kind of private counselling in their practice. But as far as I know, Muslim organisations have never really devoted this kind of attention nor this many resources to helping victims of Islamophobia. Can you comment on, I mean, is this a cutting edge grant?
Sadly, I would say yes. One of the things that Olive Tree Foundation looks at when we give out grants is are areas that are underfunded, meaning things like anti-Islamophobia, things like anti-racism, things like research work into the community, things like research work into the lives of Black Muslims. So last year, we gave a grant to Black Muslim Initiative to look at the lived experiences of Black Muslims, for example. And so when it comes to support for victims of Islamophobia, while there is a lot of attention in the community on condemnations, for example, workshops, for example, on anti Islamophobia, I'm not aware of any initiative where the victims are given the support that they need to deal with both physical as well as mental trauma. So for us, this was required, it was needed, and it was something that was underfunded in the community.
It's I mean, obviously very sad that such a thing is needed. I heard that the city of Edmonton has also, I think yesterday, announced grants for similar kinds of projects, and a Muslim group in Edmonton has also been the recipient. So perhaps it's something now up and coming that the community will start focusing on. Yeah.
I hope so, and I think not just the community, but the different levels of government have to also step up. Victims need support, and in many cases, their insurance doesn't cover it. And these, they've been attacked for at no fault of their own, and now they have to deal with the financial implications of being attacked. So I hope that the government of Canada, as well as the provincial and city governments, step in to provide funding in this area.
Now, our community hasn't always taken a very positive and proactive stance towards mental health, education, or supports. Do you think that some of the victims might be shy to come forward and identify themselves as having been such a victim of such an attack?
There are many layers to that. I think, first of all, we know that crimes such as Islamophobic attacks, for example, racist attacks, for example, are underreported in the community. In many cases, those that are attacked come from countries where there's a distrust of law enforcement, there's a distrust of police. And so they don't come up and they don't talk to the police to report these crimes, thinking that they might be victimized even further. And in some cases, people don't come up because they don't believe that anything will be done, or the perpetrators will not be caught, that it wasn't seen, that it was said in private, perhaps if it was verbal abuse, for example. But I'm glad to see that in Calgary and Edmonton, for example, these brave Muslim women have come forward. They have talked about these, and they have come forward to ask for help. And we as a community should not shy away from going to them instead of having these folks come to us. The help should already be there for them to take. They shouldn't have to ask for this.
Right. Right. Obviously, someone who is physically attacked, I mean, that's a terrible trauma to have to live through. But the trauma is much more widespread than that in the Muslim community. Even Muslim women who live in Mississauga, far, far away from Edmonton, are afraid to go out of their homes when they hear of an attack like that, even if it happened in Edmonton. So will the project also have opportunities for other people who are just feeling anxious and paranoid, scared, having trouble sleeping, even if they didn't experience something physical themselves?
You bring out a great point. And this is why some of these Islamophobic attacks are referred to as terror attacks, because the aim is to terrorize the community, to make women who are nowhere near Edmonton feel scared of coming out of their house. So our job is to give them confidence to do exactly that, to come out of their houses and to live their lives as normal. I would hope that anyone who is feeling anxious, anyone who's feeling mentally under stress, would reach out to Al Rashid and would reach out to other like organizations like ISRA, for example, to get the help that they need.
Do you think that there will be another grant forthcoming for other parts of Canada?
If we get grant requests, certainly yes. Our focus areas for 2022 remain the same. It is anti-Islamophobia, anti-racism. It is the experiences of Black Muslims, and it is youth and climate action. So if you are in a group that is involved in any of those four areas, I would encourage you to visit our website, download the project information form, and send us your idea.
The Olive Tree Foundation has been around for a long time, mashallah. How do you decide all the grants that are coming in? Like, does it give you a sense of the times, like what's going on in the community?
They do. However, the way we operate is that we have networks in the community. We liaise with not-for-profit groups as well as grassroots groups to understand what the needs are in the community. So when we give out grants, we look for things like underfunded areas or areas that are not being funded or that have not been funded historically in the community. We look for grants that are unique and that present something interesting that has not been done before, for example. And we especially love to work with youth groups. They have so much energy, they have so many new ideas. And the last 5 or 6 years, we've given a lot of grants to youth who have been doing interesting work in the community.
And so you use these grants, or you use the maybe the news or something, or you, I mean, you mentioned underfunded, but you must have a sense of knowing that these are important. So how do you make that decision? It's underfunded, but it's still important.
And it's a great question. It's somewhat subjective, but is also based on some consensus of talking to youth, talking to Black Muslims, for example, talking to disabled Muslims, for example, talking to women in the community, for example, and hearing their concerns and hearing that these concerns aren't getting the attention that they deserve, or that there's an information gap. For example, organizations like Tessellate Institute do a great job of doing research work into the community, coming out with facts and opinions into what's going on. So we use organizations like this to generate knowledge, and then from there we go out to fund projects that address those concerns and address those issues.
Well, we thank you and commend you for all. I know that it's volunteer work for you, so we commend and thank you for all the work your Olive Tree Foundation is doing. And thanks for sharing us on the show today about this particular project.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You've been watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. We're very sad that such a project is required, but we're also very glad that Olive Tree Foundation is taking leadership in this area. So if you want to have a look at their website, Olive Tree Foundation, maybe you can donate to support such a project. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for the next episode. Stay safe and God bless.